This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Drobo. Simple, safe, expandable storage for your data. To get $90 off a Drobo Gen 3, Drobo 5D, or Drobo 5N, visit drobostore.com and use the offer code HOLIDAYCHUCK. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, back one more time before the end of 2014, we have Mr. Joe Kissell. This time he is talking about his newest book. I say that a lot. Take Control of Apple Mail, second edition. Joe, it's great to see you back here talking about one of your very favorite topics.
Well, you know, it is and it isn't. I've written about mail for so many years. It does wear on a person, you know.
We won't look at any of the lines on the forehead or the wrinkles or anything.
I'm just gonna have a little sip of rain tonic here, so
keep you going. So
you know, we have this discussion. Like, do I really need to update this book again? And I don't want it to sound like that, because it's a fine book on an interesting subject. But every time we sort of say, well, you know, is it worth continuing to write about this? We look at how many copies the most recent version of the book sold, and it's like, well, yeah, people are still buying it. People really want to know. And it's one of those things that you want to say, well, it's email. You know, how hard can it be? But Apple Mail is not the best designed app in the entire world, and people have confusion about it, and people have questions about it, and year after year, Apple keeps not making it as obvious and fantastic as it could be. So I keep writing books about it.
Joe, you know, I don't want to take us too far into the stratosphere, but you would think it's just email. How hard can it be? It seems like, though, that email is such a personal thing because everyone seems to look at it a bit differently and use it a bit differently. And there are a surprising number of different metaphors out there for using mail. So I'm really not surprised, I guess, that something – I know they say it's going away. Mine isn't anytime soon.
No, mine definitely isn't either.
Yeah, and so I'm not surprised, and it just, I guess in a way it's frustrating for all of us that we can't get mail our way. And so how close does Apple Mail come to doing it your way?
Well, I'm gonna put it like this, and I'm sure that I've told you this before, but this keeps coming up. I mean, I keep getting emails from people saying, "Oh, Joe, did you see the latest whatever, fill in the blank, the name of some email app that's making waves? Isn't this great? Are you now switching from Apple Mail to this other thing?" And I'll say, well, you know, I looked at whatever the app is, and no, I'm not switching from Apple Mail. It's nice, and if people like it, then more power to them, and if it solves somebody's problems, then that's fantastic. But I don't really have email problems anymore. I solved my email problems a long time ago. I'm really happy with mail. And the thing is, there are things that mail doesn't do. Happy to acknowledge that. There are things that it does less well than some other clients. But the way I have mail customized with my particular set of plugins and settings and the types of email accounts I use, I have not found anything else out there which, regardless of plugins or extra settings or whatever, gives me that same set of capabilities. Anything else I've tried, and I have tried lots of other email clients, leaves me unsatisfied. It leaves me with too much manual work. It leaves me with, I forget things, or I can't put things where they need to go, or the process of receiving and sending email is just not as smooth as it is with my Apple Mail setup. So I don't mean to say that my way is the only way or even the best way or that it works for everyone, but for me, and of course, I have lots of email clients and I can use whatever I want. I always keep coming back to mail because with the customizations I've done, it really does do the best job for the way I perceive email.
That's a pretty high recommendation, even though you've had to use some third-party apps and all to customize it. The fact that it does what you need says a lot. So let's talk about now. Now we've done our almost obligatory introduction to Mail and Apple Mail in particular. Where is this book? Because it seems like this book was just in first edition, not revised all that long ago.
Yeah, less than a year ago,
Yeah.
which is short, a short duration for us. The thing is, Mavericks and iOS 7 came out, a year ago, October, whatever it was, but it took us until I think it was February-ish of this year to get the book on Apple Mail updated for those two operating systems. And by that time, the new OS has been out for like 5 months, and that left us a very short window when people were still, using them for upgrading to the new ones. So we wanted to get this new one out sooner. If our publication schedule would have allowed, we would have had it come out right after iOS 8 and Yosemite. In fact, it's been basically done. It's been written for and edited for some time, but it's a small publishing operation. We can only do what we can do. So we're getting it out as soon as we can, and we wanted to make sure that everybody has all the latest info on using Mail in Yosemite and iOS 8.
So where do we start, or where do we need to start with Mail in Yosemite and iOS 8? Is it really that much different? I get the impression it is.
Well, no, in fact, it's not that much different. So, as you may recall from about a year ago, when Mavericks came out, there was a wee kerfuffle about Mail. There were a lot of people who were mighty unhappy about Mail, and I was one of them. Apple made some really sweeping changes. It didn't look that much different on the surface, but underneath, Apple had changed lots of things about the way Mail works, and in particular, the way it worked with Gmail, and that just broke a ton of stuff. And so there was an update, and another update, and another update. And at a certain point, it's not that Apple had fixed all the problems or had made Mail perfect, but they'd done sort of enough to make the major complainers stop complaining. And I mean, by the time Apple got around to fixing everything that they decided to fix, I had addressed my problems in a different way. I decided to stop using Gmail. So I mean, I still have a Gmail account, but I don't use it for the bulk of my mail. So it's not like I have hundreds of thousands of messages sitting there like I did before. So that was a different solution to the problem, but it worked for me. And most of the stuff kind of got worked out, but there are a lot of people saying, okay, well, now we have a new OS. Is everything really better now? I mean, did Apple fix all the things that had been wrong, and is it safe to go back in now? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm still using it. It's fine for me. It doesn't look like the behavior with Gmail has really changed in any significant way. So if you're still using Gmail, I don't know what to tell you. It might be great. It might not be. The best answer I can really give is it's probably going to be about the same as it was under Mavericks. So the first thing you need to know about Apple Mail in Yosemite is that, especially with respect to the previous changes that happened with Gmail and to some extent with Exchange accounts, not a whole lot new. Now there are changes. Again, Apple has continued the pattern of it doesn't look very much different, but we've gone and mucked around with the plumbing, so the behavior might not be quite what you expect. But basically, in terms of reliability, it's about what it was before, both for good and for bad. There have been some changes. A couple of the most visible changes are support for mail drop. So this is the thing where you put a large attachment in an email message, and it gets sent off to iCloud, and a link is inserted in the email message instead of having to push the entire large attachment through email servers. So that's interesting. There's markup, which lets you annotate a PDF, add a signature or comments or whatever. Also, any kind of graphic, a JPEG or a PNG or whatever, right from within Mail. You don't have to open it up in Preview or something. There are some little changes with like the way nicknames are handled. Some minor changes to the way encryption and digital signatures are handled. You can now export. It's funny, Apple added an export feature for Aperture. You could previously export things, photos from an email message directly into iPhoto. Now Apple adds support for Aperture 2 just months before the new Photos app comes out and replaces both iPhoto and Aperture. So that seems really weird to me. But anyway, that happened. And then there's Apple helpfully added a new feature called, and I don't even have the exact name here, but it's an automatic setting detection checkbox. And this is supposed to make things easier by automatically figuring out what are the correct settings for the password authentication, the authentication type, and whether or not to use SSL and things like that for both incoming and outgoing accounts. But predictably, it guesses wrong sometimes. So a lot of people are finding things work better if you just go ahead and turn that off. So it often, for example, it often guesses the wrong port to use for incoming and outgoing mail, which seems like a really easy thing. But anyway, it guesses wrong. So there's that. On the iOS 8 side, there's this great new feature where you're composing a message and you realize, oh, I need some information that's in another message. I need to just pause my composition and go check something, but I don't want to have to cancel and save as a draft and then go digging around back in my drafts folder to get my message back out. So you can just drag a message down and sort of dock it or minimize it, and you can minimize lots of messages at once and go back to any of them as you're doing other stuff in Mail. So that's really cool. There are some new swipe gestures, which are interesting and confusing. Thread notifications, a few new shortcuts, things like that. So it's not that Apple changed so much. It will still look and feel familiar on both platforms. The basic capabilities are essentially the same, but they changed a lot of little things that are not well explained. Like, why did you have to do that? Wasn't it working well enough before? Why did you go change this? And are you sure that change didn't break something for people? So some of the changes are good, some of them are just weird, and some of them aren't so good. So part of my job is to go through all those things and spell out what different you need to know now.
Without getting into a lot of detail or asking you to chronicle all of them, can you give us an idea of what you consider the little things that might be a little better or a little worse?
So let's say, I have a chapter in the book on encryption, and it's an increasingly interesting topic, I think, for a lot of people. And it's very important to be able to know how to send and receive encrypted email messages. And Mail has a built-in way to do this, which is kind of awful. Or you can use a plugin to use GPG or GNU-PG or PGP for encryption. Anyway, on iOS, used to be that you can choose to either sign a message so that people can verify that you are the one who sent it, not somebody else, or encrypt a message, or both. So, fair enough. So you get in a message that has been signed and has a certain little icon in the header to let you know that it's been signed, which is as it should be. You get an encrypted message. It lets you know that it's encrypted by a different little icon, a little lock icon. That is also as it should be. It used to be that if it was both signed and encrypted, you get both icons, but now you only get one icon. You only get the encrypted icon if it's both. And I don't know why that is. I would like to see both because it could be encrypted but not signed. So there are a lot of just weird little things like that where I'm sure there was a reason. I don't know what the reason was, but it's not a huge thing either way. But it's one of those things that you might not notice unless you're really digging around. And then one day a message comes in like, oh, huh, that's weird. It's encrypted but not signed. What? Oh, well, Apple just changed something. So stuff like that.
Interesting that you would pick that example because I was going to ask you about security, and where that fits in. If you will, let's just go off topic just this much for a quick second,
Sure.
and explain the difference or the what. Let me try that again. Explain what encrypted versus signed means, because I know that's going to cause a lot of confusion. And then if you have your mail program doing something a little bit unusual, then it just causes more.
Sure. So the word signature is a little bit confusing when it comes to email because it can mean two different things. For a long time, the only thing the word signature meant was that little thing that you put down at the bottom of your email message. It might have your name or your address or a little quote or something. It's just ornamentation, basically. It's something you either automatically or manually stick at the end of a message, like your signature on a paper letter. Do you remember paper letters? Those were awesome. But in the digital, in the world of encryption, a digital signature means something else. It is basically a little chunk of information that is carried along with the message in such a way that if anything about the message were to change, the signature would become invalid. And the point of a digital signature is to be able to verify that the person a message appears to come from is in fact the person who sent it. So basically, if you get a message that has a digital signature on it, but you get a little error message saying, can't verify this or whatever, that could tell you that the message was intercepted and altered, or that it's not coming from the expected source, that someone is faking the from address or something of that sort. So the purpose of a digital signature is to reassure the recipient that the person who claimed to send it really did, and that the message hasn't been altered in transit. Now, the reason this comes up is that if you are using Apple Mail's built-in encryption method, which is a very common method. I mean, Outlook supports it, and Thunderbird supports it, and almost every email client supports it. It's called SMIME. Then if you want to send someone an encrypted message, what you need is their public key. You need their public encryption key, and the usual way that someone sends you their public key is to sign a message. They don't encrypt it yet. They just say, here's my digital signature. It's a certificate that contains that public key. And then once you've received a signed message from them, you now have their public key that gets imported into your keychain automatically, and you then gain the capability of sending them encrypted mail. But it's this awkward little dance you have to do. I can't just say, hey, Chuck, I'm going to send you an encrypted message and only you will be able to open it. And before I can do this, I have to say, okay, Chuck, send me a signed message. Then once I have your public key in my keychain, I can send you an encrypted message. It's this awkward procedure you have to go through. But because you need to do this with that form of encryption, there's this need to have messages that are signed but not encrypted. Now, encryption actually scrambles the contents of a message so that if someone else were to, grab it off of your mail server or see it in transit somehow, they would not be able to read the contents without having the recipient's private key. So I, of course, explain all this in detail in the book. Encryption is what you want. You want to make sure that no outsider can see what the contents of the message. And I explain how to do this with Apple Mail's built-in tools. And the thing is, actually using it is not a problem at all. You just click an icon and done. It's signed. It's the other stuff. It's this bizarre process you have to go through to get a certificate and to install it, and this exchange of keys you have to do. It's really quite cumbersome, and that's why more people don't encrypt their mail. It's an awkward procedure. So I also talk about an easier alternative method, which requires you get third-party software. But GNU Privacy Guard (GPG) is current. There's a version of it for Mac that's currently free. The email component of it is going to become a paid item in the near future, but whatever it costs, I'm sure it'll be worth it. And it uses a similar kind of public key encryption, but what's cool about it is that PGP, so PGP is the underlying technology, and there's a branch of PGP, if you will, called OpenPGP, and that's the standard, the protocol that the official semantic PGP software uses, as well as this open source stuff. And PGP relies on a public key server. So that means there's a computer out there someplace, or lots of them, in fact, that stores people's public keys. So basically, you can tell Mail, hey, I want to send Chuck Joiner an email message. I have his email address, but I don't know his public key. Would you just go ahead and look that up for me? So it all just happens automagically behind the scenes. The software will say, I'm going to check this public key server, see if, there's Chuck Joiner's address, here's his public key, and use that to encrypt the message. So I don't have to alert you in advance. I'm going to send you an encrypted email and ask you to send me a signature. I just do it, and it knows because you have also done this. You've also set up similar software, and so I know that your public key is on the server someplace, and it just happens. So that is from a usability point of view, it's way easier. And yes, you have to add some extra software, but the actual process is far less painful.
MacVoices is sponsored by Drobo. Simple, safe, expandable storage for your data. I've been telling you how great Drobo is now for some time. There are 3 key reasons Drobo is great, and I want to be sure you understand. First is the safety factor. By having my data stored on a Drobo, or in my case several Drobos, instead of a chain of hard drives or one big hard drive, I'm not concerned about a drive going bad. In fact, I'm not concerned about even 2 drives going bad. Drobo's Beyond RAID technology spreads the data across the drives in each unit so that if one goes bad, I don't lose any data. No sweating a recovery attempt, no worries about losing family photos, my scanned documents, video projects. Everything is not only safe, but it remains accessible. I can even set up the Drobos to protect the data if 2 drives fail at the same time. Unlikely, but possible. And I sleep better knowing I've got yet another layer of protection. Second is the expandability of Drobo. With most storage options, what I buy is what I get. Trying to open a hard drive case used to be easy, but now it often ends up breaking the case in the process, so using it after the drive goes bad is a pain at best, impossible at worst, a hassle in all cases. With Drobo, you're never stuck. When you want to upgrade your Drobo with more space, you just pop an old drive out and pop a new, larger capacity drive in. Able to accept up to the new 8TB drives, the Drobo doesn't confine you to your current choices or condemn you to constantly buying new drives, but grows with your storage needs. Third is the simplicity of Drobo. Everything I need to do with my Drobo can be done from the Drobo dashboard software. Setting up a time machine partition is straightforward. Setting up partitions for music, movies, TV shows, or anything else is equally simple. I know what's going on with my Drobo at any time with just a glance because of the series of LEDs that indicate how much data I'm storing on my Drobo and the health of each drive. Just like a traffic signal, green means go, yellow means something's amiss, and red demands attention. And on the hardware side, when you do want to do those upgrades I mentioned, you don't need anything other than your fingers. No tools, no fancy screwdrivers, just your fingers. You can swap out a hard drive in a whole lot less than a minute with a Drobo. Simple, safe, and expandable. That's Drobo. And you can get started with Drobo this holiday season at a price you can't beat. The Drobo 3rd generation, the entry-level Drobo, has all the advantages I talked about. Able to withstand 2 hard drive failures, easy to expand up to 32 terabytes of storage. Easy to use, easy to understand, and data protection on top of that. You can get the Gen 3 Drobo for the list price of $349, or you could save some holiday cash by going to drobostore.com/MacVoices and using the code HOLIDAYCHUCK, all uppercase, and get that same Gen 3 Drobo for $90 less. Or you could use the same code to get $90 off the Thunderbolt-equipped 5-bay Drobo 5D or the network-attached 5-bay Drobo 5N. Or use the code 3 times and get $90 off of each of those Drobos. A 5D for Dad, a 5N for Mom, and a Gen 3 for the kids. They'll love it because you just protected their photos, their school projects, the family recipes, and pretty much everything else in your digital life. Want more? Go to drobo.com/MacVoices and register to win a Gen 3 Drobo to go with those others you just picked up at a discount. You have until December 31st to register. That's $90 off the Drobo Gen 3, $90 off the Drobo 5N, or $90 off the Drobo 5D at drobostore.com/MacVoices. Drobo. Simple, safe, expandable storage for your data. Thanks to Drobo for their support of MacVoices. That's a lot more than I was expecting, but that's good. That's a good explanation. And this is important stuff, especially in today's world, it seems. So I get the impression up to this point we've been talking about Apple Mail for Yosemite.
Mostly, yeah. I mean, there are a lot of similarities between the two platforms. There are actually, I will say this. So in my, I talk about both platforms. There's one chapter that is specifically dedicated to iOS 8, and the chapter sort of starts out with, well, there are some features that only the Mac version of Mail can do, and the iOS 8 version unfortunately can't. And every time I get to go back and see, well, is there anything off of this list that I can delete now? Has it gotten a little bit more powerful? And it has gotten incrementally more powerful. It's still not, in my estimation, a substitute for a desktop email client. There are still things that I realize I need to do that it's either too awkward or just impossible to do from iOS Mail. But one example of a new thing is iOS 8 Mail can now expand zip archives. So if somebody goes on a Mac, let's say, takes a bunch of Word files or pictures or what have you in the Finder, and they create a zip file, a zip archive, and drop that into an email message. Used to be you couldn't open that on an iOS 8 device or on an iOS device, but with iOS 8 now you can. You can see all the stuff that's in that zip archive, which is great. It's cool, and that's one less thing you need to have a desktop computer for. So that's great, and always happy to see progress. But the big thing that iOS 8 still doesn't have, of the many things it doesn't have rules. So your iOS version of Mail cannot automatically sort stuff into mailboxes as it's coming in. It can't do auto replies. It can't do spam filtering, any of that kind of stuff. So what I recommend as a workaround is, if your mail server lets you do these things, do it on your mail server. If you use Gmail lets you set up filters on the server. iCloud Mail has rules on the server, and most other mail servers have something like that too. So set up your rules on the server so that it will do that sorting, the spam filtering, all that stuff there. That way, by the time the messages arrive on your iOS device, they're already filtered, sorted, spam gone, that sort of thing.
Okay. And boy, you keep reading ahead on my questions list, because I was going to ask you about feature parity, and so you just addressed that there's not parity. Is it a surprise that you don't have filtering on iOS, or is that something that is just processor intensive enough that you wouldn't want it on iOS?
I don't know. I don't quite know how to answer that. Modern iOS devices have some pretty beefy processors. I don't really think it's. I'm not really sure that it's a processor issue. There's got to be some reason. I mean, there might be overhead that I'm just not aware of. It may. I really would rather even not speculate. I don't know what. I mean, you can buy third-party email clients for iOS that do have rules or filters built in. Um, what's more concerning to me is that there's no extensibility. Well, there's limited extensibility. Okay, so now we have extensions in Yosemite and iOS 8, and you have like, the share sheet icons and stuff like that. But you still don't have the kinds of plugins on iOS that you have on OS 10. So, for example, on my Mac, I've got, I don't know, 6 or 8 plugins that I use all the time. There's Mail Act On and Mail Tags and Spam Sieve and all these things that can add extra features to Mail on my Mac, but you can't do that sort of thing. The architecture on iOS 8, even though it's a lot more extension friendly than it was, still doesn't enable any outside software to make fundamental changes or additions to the functionality of Apple Mail. So, it's for good reasons. It's for sandboxing, security, and all that. But it means that what you got is what you got. You can't add a new feature. If you want GPG or PGP encryption capability on your iPhone, you got to buy a third-party email client that does that. And there are a couple that I know of, and I mentioned them in the book. But it is not possible to add that capability on to Apple Mail for iOS. And more is a pity because the third-party clients, I mean, they get the job done, but they're not pretty, they're not easy to use, and I would rather just be able to do everything right within Mail.
I'm a little surprised, then I started, as you were talking, I sort of took it back, because now we have the sharing between photo apps with filters and that kind of thing. So I guess there is a precedent in iOS 8 to have some kind of potential extensibility stuck in there or added in. But that's new, isn't it? If it happened,
yeah, it's new.
Yeah.
It's a good step. It's a really good step in the right direction. There are more ways to share and for apps to talk to each other now than there used to be. So that's fine. But you still can't have, you have the user installable keyboards and stuff like that, which, very, very helpful. So one of the things that, I used to say, it's too bad that you can't, you have Apple's built-in text expansion capability, which is kind of meh. And it's too bad that you can't use Text Expander Touch within Mail because it's better unless you do more stuff, but not supported within Mail. Well, now it is because you have these multiple keyboards, and that's the form that Text Expander Touch now takes. So that's fantastic. But in terms of actually modifying the fundamental behavior of the app, that's something that Apple doesn't let other apps do, and so. If my particular beef, for example, was, hey, I need spam filtering, I need it on the device because my server's not doing the job. I can get it on my Mac with Spam Sieve or whatever. You just can't do that in Apple Mail, and my guess would be you never will be able to on an iOS device.
The last time you were here to talk about Mail, I recall it as being something of a session on the couch where you were a little bit crazed, to put it mildly.
That's true. That's true.
But what I'm hearing here is that not only are you calmer and a little relaxed, but you feel like maybe these versions of Mail on iOS and Yosemite are a bit more where they should be and a lot less frustrating. Or am I really just catching you on a good day?
it's kind of true. I mean, they are incrementally better. The people who did not like Apple Mail, they did not like its look and feel, they did not like its basic approach or metaphor or its basic set of capabilities, are really not going to like it much better now. It's not like there were any sweeping changes. And believe me, Apple Mail could use some sweeping changes. There are aspects of Mail that every time a new version of OS 10 comes out, and I look at this, I'm like, really? This is still the same? Are you kidding me? Does anybody at Apple even look at this? It makes me crazy.
There's the Joe I know and love.
Thanks. But there are parts of Mail that I think I am astonished that year after year after year nobody changes, because there are things that really do suck. But again, sucks less than the competition. So, I really wish that Apple would give it a really thorough, rethinking, and not just fix bugs, which do have to be fixed, and not just add little features like markup, but look at some things that make people tear out their hair because they just don't reflect the way normal, ordinary people in the outside world use Mail. That's I think the biggest frustration, is that Mail has out of the box without the customizations and add-ons, it has the appearance of being designed by people who only ever use email for testing. That, they set up their little test accounts and their test suites, and it's like, well, since I only get 3 email messages a day, looks okay to me, but, I don't get 3 email messages a day, maybe 300, sure. And like the real world, in the real world, people have lots of email accounts. They get lots of messages. They do really complex things, and they need to not have to agonize over, well, I had to, spend half a day fiddling with Mail to get it to work kind of correctly for me. They need to just work. So I think that Apple could make it way more usable and way more user-friendly out of the box. Wish they would. Don't know if they ever will. It doesn't seem to be an app that Apple pays an awful lot of attention to, but one can always hope.
Well, and if they ever do that, then there's not going to be as much of a need for the book. So,
well, that's okay. I've got lots of books. I've got other things I can write about.
Yeah, we know.
Because this is the real frustration for me. I started out by saying, really, did we have to update this book again? Yeah, we really do. And it's not fun for me to have to say, okay, look, readers, Apple still hasn't gotten their act together on this thing. I mentioned that the S-MIME encryption is really a bear to set up. Apple could solve that problem. Also regular signatures, like just the ordinary, your name and address or whatever. That's stupidly hard to set up. It's weird. There are a lot of things, and I have to say, I'm wasting your time, readers, with this because Apple didn't do it right. I would be happy to be able to say, oh, hey, nothing to say anymore. They got it right. So let's talk about something else. Let's talk about something that's more, a little, a step above the boring details. And if Apple ever just decides to make it so utterly I don't know if Apple could come up with a solution that anybody could just look at it and say, oh yeah, I get that, and a book would be completely irrelevant. Nobody would be happier than me. There are plenty of topics to write books about. I will be happy to leave this one aside and move on to something else.
Joe, to wrap this up, who is this book for? And is it for a heavy mail user who is looking for the new updates? Is it someone who is having trouble or frustration? Is it for someone who doesn't maybe understand some of the features, new and or old, of mail?
I would say it's mostly for people who use mail and are feeling a little bit frustrated with it. People who feel like, yeah, I can basically send and receive mail, but how do I do this? Or why is this happening in such an odd way? Or how do I do some slightly more advanced things? People who look at it and just go, I don't know, I don't get it. Why? And I guess I can't really answer the why questions, like why did Apple decide to do it that way, but I can say, okay, here's how to use this feature that is not obvious. So I feel like if you're a really light email user and the Apple Mail experience you get out of the box is fine with you, then you don't read the book. Really, you don't. It's not going to make your life better. If you are of a disposition where you've already decided that Apple Mail sucks, you hate it, you must use something else because only that something else meets your aesthetics, or your aesthetic preferences, or lets you get the particular kind of work done that you need to, then I'm not going to. The purpose of the book is not to try to convince you to use mail instead. No, use what you use and be happy. But if you're a mail user that just you feel like you're not getting everything out of it that you could, you're confused by some things, you're frustrated, you're experiencing errors, bugs, whatever, and you'd like some guidance in making it a better experience, smoother. What plugins could I use that would make mail faster, easier, more efficient to use? How can I be a better correspondent? How can I file messages more effectively? How can I be in control of my inbox the way Joe Kissell appears to be? Because I know he gets lots and lots of mail, but he's not sweating. He's saying, everything's just fine. He has a system. Well, you want to read about that system, pick up the book.
That last part might be the best reason, because you do keep up on mail, and I know you get a staggering amount. And yet when I email you about this, that, or the other, I always get a pretty darn quick reply. Sometimes, unfortunately, faster than I reply to people I should reply to. So if that's the best endorsement I can give folks right there, this is an email expert. He's authored a book. Go get it.
Yeah.
You need it.
Well, and again, I know we've talked about the fact that I have my way of feeling in control of email. Adam Engst has his way, totally different from mine. I mean, almost exactly opposite from mine. And there are lots of other methods out there. And all I can say is the way my brain is wired and the types of email I get, my way works great. And if you want to do something else, I'm not gonna say only my way will work. But if you're just stuck and you don't have a way, you're just sort of trying to cope, you've got 30,000 messages in your inbox, well, give this a try.
What do it cost me to give it a try, Joe? How is this one priced, and how are you handling upgrades or whatever?
You always ask me this, and then I always like, I should have checked on that, because I don't have my finger on the pulse of pricing. So this book is like 180-ish pages long. It has a $15 cover price. Of course, if you had an older version of it, you should have received an email from us already about getting it at a discount. Getting the new version at a discount. I don't know off the top of my head what that discount is, but what you can do is always click check for updates on the cover, and that will tell you about whatever discounts are available to people who had older editions. And of course, you can also buy it in a bundle with other Take Control books and get a discount that way.
Great. Is this number 49 or 48?
No, well, so the way...
Because I know we're getting there.
Book 49 happened. The way I am counting, this is a new edition, so that doesn't count as a new title. If you were to count every new edition, well, I'd be up into the 70s or something by now. And if you were to count every minor update, well, it would be, I mean, I have no idea, over 100. So the way I am counting is when a book comes out with a new title, that increments my counter. So book number 49, I think, was the digital sharing book. And so this is a new edition, but it's not. I don't count it as a new title. Book number 50 will be sometime in 2015, and I thought I knew what it was going to be, and then we started having some discussions about a new thing, and now I'm not quite sure, but it'll happen sooner or later. In the meantime, there will be other new additions and other smaller updates, which I'm sure I'll come back to talk to you about. Book number 50 might not be till, March or something. It's okay. There will be stuff, stuff to read, stuff to buy, and we'll get there when we get there.
Great. Well, we'll be patiently waiting on book 50. We'll be anxiously awaiting the updates and everything else, because as we all dig into Yosemite and iOS 8, it seems like there are questions there that need to be answered, and
For sure.
you're the answer man.
I try to be.
Joe, if we don't talk to you before the end of the year, thanks so much for everything in 2014. Thanks for all the work, all the testing, all the authoring. You're amazing. You're amazing.
Thank you kindly, and happy holidays to you and yours.
We will talk to you, if not in 2014, definitely in 2015.
Awesome.
Folks, I'll have links in the show notes. You want to go to takecontrolbooks.com and pick up Joe's Take Control of Apple Mail, second edition, along with 10 or 20 of his other titles. No problem at all. They're great stocking stuffers. They work well for that. The show notes are there for you. I'm Chuck Joyner. We'll be back here with you next time on MacVoices. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the MacVoices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free MacVoices magazine on Flipboard by visiting macvoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by Cashfly at cashfly.com.
Here's a thought question.
Okay.
How many ebooks can you fit in a stocking?